What is our moral obligation to the poor?
This video will begin by explaining Peter Singer's utilitarian stance on poverty. In part 1, I will state Singer's main claims, inferences, and conclusions. Part 2 of this video will evaluate the argument. I will identify any apparent problems with some of Singer's claims and inferences. I will explain why this problem is only apparent and how Singer's argument indirectly addresses it.
Part 1, the explanation.
Peter Singer begins his argument by stating that about 1.4 billion people worldwide exist in absolute poverty, which means that they do not have enough income to satisfy their basic needs. Results of this inability to satisfy needs results in about 24,000 unnecessary deaths every day. People who are living in absolute affluence have enough extra income to satisfy their basic needs and transfer this extra money to the poor without sacrificing their basic welfare. This brings Peter Singer to his first major claim that states those who withhold their extra income from the poor are allowing these people to die, and that there are no intrinsic differences between allowing somebody to die and actively killing somebody. There are only extrinsic differences, such as motivation, but we are responsible for all the consequences of our actions. Peter Singer states that even though the victims of absolute poverty in far-off third world countries are not identifiable, we should still take their interests and basic needs into equal consideration with our own. Knowingly risking killing an innocent person is wrong. This is an inference that Peter Singer assumes we all agree upon. Now, knowing allowing somebody to die is exactly what affluent nations are doing when they put their interest of having luxury items above aiding people who do not have their basic needs. The governments of affluent nations are also complicit in causing such immense poverty. Affluent nation governments are economically tied with the governments of impoverished countries. We buy cheap goods they produce, which contributes to their poverty. So not only is it good to transfer our funds to these impoverished nations, but it is also our moral obligation to aid. Singer claims that rights to life or property are incompatible with standing by and watching somebody die when we could easily save them. Now, there are strategies that he suggests that can increase helping the impoverished. First off, we could not place blame on people who already give, but we feel are not giving enough, because this is counterproductive. Giving any aid that will knowingly alleviate some poverty is morally sound. Peter Singer's conclusions state that there is some extreme poverty we can prevent without sacrificing anything of comparable moral significance. Since those living in absolute affluence are allowing the poor to die, we need to change our public ethics so that anyone who can afford luxuries should give something significant to those living in extreme poverty.
Part 2, the evaluation.
A question that arises from Singer's argument is whether we should treat the causes or the symptoms of poverty. Combating poverty is a slow process because of its magnitude and the corrupt institutions that are feeding its growth. Should we give directly to those who are suffering now and allow the corruption to fuel poverty's growth? Or should we fund projects that attack the causes of poverty at its roots? Do we reform infrastructure to alleviate future impoverishment and allow current suffering to continue? Or do we try and stop as much current suffering as we possibly can? Which of these options is our best choice? The problem here is that Singer does not explicitly tell us what the best means of giving to the poor are. He repeatedly emphasizes that as long as we know our donations are helping to relieve poverty, other factors are merely trivial. This apparent problem with Singer's claim is addressed with his explanation of the total and prior views of utilitarianism. The total view considers the interest of all those who will suffer in the future, and the prior view looks only at those who are suffering now. Implicitly, Singer claims that no matter what view is accepted, charity must still be given. The only factor that must matter when making a sacrifice for the poor is whether or not, quote, you can prevent some poverty, unquote. Time period, just like location, makes no, quote, intrinsic differences to the rights and obligations of individuals, end quote.
This has been a Joanna Warren evaluation.